Andor Episode 8, Narkina 5. The Empire catches up to Cassian, shipping him off to an Imperial Corrections Facility on Narkina 5, but are as yet unaware of his identity and past. Meanwhile, elsewhere, several events start unfolding as the result of the Empire begins to crack down on suspected rebel activity. So, this looks to be the start of the Cassian prison break arc. We previously had the gold stealing heist, and now we get this. And yeah, I do love me a good prison break story, so I'm all for it. Especially considering escaping from this high-tech, futuristic prison in the middle of an ocean is unlike something that we've never ever seen before. And these prison scenes gave me major THX 1138 vibes, which, as you know, was George Lucas's first movie. So it's cool to see that being represented here in Andor, but in its own unique take. And at the same time, it also had a touch of Squid Game as well. Now, what's interesting is that Cassian is in an all-human male prison, so it seems that the Empire is segregating their prisoners not only on gender, but species as well, which I would imagine this being one of the kinder ones as far as Imperial prisons go, as I don't want to imagine how the alien prisons look like. I say this because the prisoners here are allowed to rise to authority positions in their units, they're given as much food as they need, and they're only really punished if they purposefully step out of line or fail to meet their production quota. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still ultimately depressing and it's slave labor, but at the end of the day, I guarantee you that this has to be paradise compared to the incarcerated aliens who are potentially hunted for sport and killed on a whim. It's also interesting how all of the prisoners are made to be barefoot, and that's as a means of controlling them through an electrified floor. We even see one of the prisoners offing himself and everyone around him afterwards just being annoyed by the suicide, which shows that this must happen relatively often due to how desensitized everyone is, which feels rather dark in a new way for Star Wars. Then again, these are the dark times after all. The Imperial war machine just keeps on chugging and doesn't care who has to fall for it to achieve its success. Anyway, this whole setup at the prison really fascinates me, as even though it's the Empire taking advantage of everyone for slave labor, there was this competitive edge to it, as every cell block, room, whatever you want to call it, is competing amongst each other. And that's the Squid Game flavor I was talking about earlier, as this almost feels like a Star Wars version of Squid Game, but instead of money, everyone is competing for flavor. Talk about a unique spin. I should also mention that within the prison, we do get a cameo to Rogue One in Ruscott Melshi, who ends up later being Cassian's second-in-command of the Rebel Pathfinders. So it was pretty dang cool to see how they met here. The second cameo, well, kind of a cameo, is Kino Loy, who's a fellow inmate and also the manager of Cassian's cell block. His character is really not all that important, but more so that we see Andy Serkis back in Star Wars again, which is nice. And this time he's playing a non-CGI character, but before we take a step further, no, Kino is not, nor will ever be Snoke. At least I don't think so. I just want to make that clear before all of the goofy Snoke theories enter the room just because they share the same actor. As, come on, this is not the first time an actor has played more than one role in Star Wars and having two separately different characters. Now, other than the competitive so-called game that is played every day in the prison, there are a couple of things to take note of here. First, the prisoners have absolutely no idea what's happening in the outside world and are surprised that Cassian hasn't even heard of the Public Order Resentencing Directive, a brand new law invoked after the Eldani attack that has doubled everyone's sentence, all in the name of Imperial security and protection. To add to this, there's also something funny going on here where some prisoners are coordinating with other cell blocks by sending hand signals to each other. We as the audience nor Cassian know what's really happening here. But it's likely this could play into the eventual prison break, which I gotta say should be very satisfying to see. Elsewhere, we had a lot of different events unfolding. Imperial control over Ferrix is at an all-time high, with Bix being captured after being caught sending radio signals to an unknown source, which later turns out to be Luthen on Coruscant. Luthen wants to take the call, but Clea insists that he doesn't, as the ISB could be listening in and track him down. Which, as it turns out afterwards, yeah, she was right. Also on Ferrix, Marva seems to have grown sick after falling down and missing Cassian, but that still does not hurt her rebel spirit. While Brasso is being followed by both Vel and Cinta, who are undercover and trying to track down Cassian. And yeah, originally I assumed that it would be Vel who would maybe be the one who finds Cassian and helps break him out of the space prison. But after seeing this, then nah, that theory is completely thrown out the window by this point. Ain't no way these two are getting any clues on the whereabouts of Cassian on Ferrix. But on the flip side, I did like that we had a small classic "what about us" exchange between these two, which feels like a throwback to the same exact talk that Kanan and Hera had in Rebels. Only difference is that here it feels cold, complex, and, well, unromantic. Back on Coruscant, Mon Mothma is slowly starting to peel off her fakeness for the Empire even around Perrin, and learns of a roadblock from Tay concerning her undercover operation. I'm also not sure if it's just me or not, but there seems like there's something fishy going on with Mon's daughter, which I just can't put my finger on what. And at a later dinner party scene, I did like that Mon admits to having moved to Coruscant and becoming a senator at a very young age. I think it was 16? All while at the same time getting married with Perrin through an arranged marriage as per Chandrilan tradition. And that was pretty cool to hear on the show, as her actress did actually say this during an interview, and I wasn't sure if this was just something that Tony Gilroy told her to motivate her on set or not, but no, it turns out it's actually canon, so cool. And at the same time on Coruscant, we also finally saw some advancement in Cyril's story as he meets Dedra. Oh, my bad, it's actually pronounced Dedra. I've been mispronouncing her name this entire time. But yeah, this is a meeting that I knew would eventually happen. They were kinda hinting towards it, but it did not go the way I thought it would. As it ends up with Cyril not being as much help to her as he would have liked, and even ends up annoying her with his overreach of blind ambition. Although I did find Cyril kind of hilarious here because, as it turns out, while his coworkers are probably killing work time by browsing space Facebook or something like that, this dude is sitting there filing complaint after complaint about Cassian. Oh yeah, you could say Cassian is living rent-free in his head. That said, it's also kind of funny in another way because Cyril and Dedra are characters whom you want to see succeed thanks to this show's writing, all while at the same time fail because they're going up against the good guys in the story. So yeah, it's weird, but I like it. Can't say the same for a lot of the other villains in the other Star Wars shows. Now, as a nice bonus, we also get to see Luthen travel to Saw Gerrera on Segra Milo in an effort to arrange a meeting between Saw and his contact, which turns out to be a separatist named Anto Krieger. And well, clearly Luthen didn't do his homework, as Saw is disgusted with the idea due to his, past struggles with the Seppies, who of course killed his sister in the Clone Wars, so yeah, he's not a fan of the idea at all. Then again, to be fair, Saw doesn't really want to work with anyone, it seems. So I'm really curious to see how the Alliance will talk him into joining them later on. And while we're on this topic, I have to admit that this scene was my one and only gripe with this episode. It's another nitpick, which is Saw's accent. As, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this happening at roughly the same time as Season 1 of Rebels? Because why has Saw already shifted over to his Rogue One accent versus to how he sounded in Jedi Fallen Order and then Rebels? Which, may I remind you, is very, very different. Especially since his Rebels appearance takes place after this. Again, I know I sound like a broken record always complaining about voices and accents on this show, but yeah, this did annoy me and I can't hide that. On the plus side, it was awesome to see Two Tubes, the Partisans, and their Black X-Wings again on the screen. And well, the more stuff we do get with them, then all the better, because I'm fascinated with the idea behind Saw's partisan group. Overall, I thought this episode was exceptionally good. The acting, the sharp writing, the great production, set design, script, photography, music, you name it, it was all good. And the cameos were a very nice bonus as well. I mean, sure, this episode didn't wow me like the last few did, but as the start of a brand new arc in the season, I didn't really expect it to. And although it's mostly set up, it now feels twice as tense and fast-paced as the previous start of an arc. So we're for sure headed in the right direction here with the writing, that's for sure. We're now seeing all the storylines slowly coming together, and we still have like 4 episodes to go. And considering how the show just keeps accelerating, it feels like the action won't wait until the 3rd episode in this arc this time. Which I honestly don't think anyone will be complaining about that at all. And that was my take on this episode of Andor. Let me know what you all thought about the episode in the comments below, and if you haven't already, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.